Hi everyone, I'm JIAO Huaiyi. It is my pleasure to be here to give you a short presentation which takes Yaowen from the beginning to the present as the theme. So, in this presentation, I will cover several parts, which are the introduction, the main argument of the reading, my critical reflection, contemporary situation, conclusion, and finally, the discussion question. So now, let's start with the introduction. From Cui Jian's first show of I Have Nothing on the concert, Let the World Be Filled with Love in 1986, to Hong Kong Hum Hum concert, the highlight of Chinese rock history in 1994, and ultimately to the present ascendant situation. Chinese rock music, which is also called Yaowen in Chinese, has experienced some twists and turns in the past 40 years. And this reading exactly shows the rough time of Chinese rock in the 90s. So in this reading, Robert mainly argues that, influenced by Western rock music, Chinese Yaowen started to grow up, of which the development had experienced barriers from both government intervention and market economy. To further explain, the state played a continued role in supervising the production process, including recording and marketing and performance of rock in China. In the meanwhile, Yaowen was facing difficulties in changing markets where profit comes first. For example, negligible income, rampant pirating, and limited and unstable opportunities was generated, all of which conspired to create a hard situation for the musicians. Now, I will share my critical reflections in two parts. I quite agree with the statement that Yaowen in the 90s China was a phenomenon rather than a culture, because it was not generated by itself, but was introduced into China from the Western countries. The strong realistic critical spirit and the conflict with the dominant values are the most fundamental spiritual characteristics of rock music. Because of the delay in the experience of modernity compared with Western countries, it was still very common to see the theme of anti-modern industry culture in the expression of Chinese rock music. Along with the reform and opening up, the Western rock music spread to China in the last century. Young people who had just experienced the travails of cultural revolution gradually cast off the shackles of traditional ideology and were desperate for freedom and individuality. So reasonably, rock music became one of the best tools to respond to their confusion and express their indignation and critical spirit. Throughout the 1980s, China was in the period of transition from planned economy to commodity economy. So Yaowen didn't get much support from the commercial power, and the marketization degree was low. Therefore, most of the rock music was underground. Enter the 1990s, China began to devote itself to building a market economy, ushering in the springtime of Yaowen. However, when the youth waved their hands together with the musicians, some issues were accompanied apart from the government and the market factors discussed in the reading. Just like what I have quoted earlier, the sudden booming of Yaowen is more like a temporary phenomenon because the rebellious spirit of rock doesn't match Chinese people's pursuit of stability and harmony. With the connection between Yaowen and business becoming closer, The demand of record labels had come into conflict with the tenet of rebellious spirit, freedom, and independence, which remains to this day. Moreover, Yaoguan has a very limited audience, who were mostly young people from urban middle-class families with relatively high socio-economic status, while those who live in the countryside with low economic and cultural level were excluded. Now, in this part, I will give a brief introduction about the current situation of Chinese rock. After the short period of golden time in the early to mid-90s, Yaoguan seems to have gone downhill overnight. Many people claim that Chinese rock had come to an end, but is that true? I think this can be interpreted in two ways. On one hand, with the rise of the internet, Chinese audience increasingly turn to the digital music which can be downloaded online. Traditional record industry was hit seriously because of that and private discs. International music and pop music also occupied a large quantity of market and fewer people focused on Chinese rock. And fan economy become the mainstream in the entertainment industry. All of these drive Yaoguan into a corner and further force it to cater to capital, which I'm gonna talk about later. And now, this is a graph that shows the preferred music genre of Chinese digital music users in 2020. You can see that rock music has a relatively low percentage of audience compared to other genres. On the other hand, Yaoguan become too commercial and run counter to its original spirits. In people's mind, rock musicians are supposed to simply devote themselves for love, but not fame and money. According to the 2018 survey by the School of Music and Recording Arts of Communication, University of China, 42% of the musicians have a monthly income below 8,000 RMB, not to mention the rock musicians. 30% of Chinese musicians have no income, nearly 60% have a part-time job, and 95% cannot make a living on music alone. As a result, the rockers have to think of new ways to make a living. For example, the lead singer of New Pants used to draw cartoons and work as a director. The bassist of Penicillin are working as an operation in an internet company. The lead singer of Hedgehog is a programmer as his regular job. Apart from earning extra money, some of the musicians change their music style, such as Wang Feng and Xu Wei, makes it closer to pop music to cater to the public, but lose the critical character of rock. Their current work is even called pseudo-rock by some people. Other musicians choose to take part in the variety shows and commercial performance because this will help them gain money and reputation. However, I think the saying of Chinese rock had come to an end is not reasonable. Yaoguan is still in a stage of rise. The flourishing music festival and live house throughout China shows the recovery of Yaoguan. And compared to 1990s, the rock music at present has more varied style and soundtrack. The technique become more mature and the bands begin to have a clear tendency to style. What we have to do is to enhance people's copyright awareness. That is, respect the efforts of the musicians and give them equivalent rewards. And that is what keeps Yaoguan moving on. The musicians should also try to localize rock music, making it cater for the culture but not the market. So, to draw a conclusion, I have summarized the thesis statement of the reading, the reason of the rock boom in 90s, and some other problems that impact the development of Yaoguan, as well as its contemporary situation of being doubted to be dead. And on the whole, trance rock is keep going up and its future is promising and worth expecting. Finally, I have a discussion question for you to think about. And that is all I want to talk about today. Thank you for listening to my presentation.